Hello, this is Dr. Mears. Today we are going to be learning about box plots with frequency tables, and these are also known as box and whisker plots. We're going to be doing two examples today. There's going to be one where there's a frequency table. Please notice it is not grouped. And I also did put L1 and L2 here so that you know what to put in your calculator. So here we go. An experiment was performed 60 times. The scores from the experiment were recorded in the frequency table. Here's your score, which we will use as L1. Here's your frequency, which is L2. So let's just look at this table so we can put it in context. If I were scoring the experiment a 1, there were 6 ones. That's how we read it. Remember, the frequency is how many times it occurs. There are 12 2s, 13 3s, 15 4s, so on and so forth. So now using that information, let's go and make a box plot. We will be making a box plot. You need your graphical display calculator, so make sure you have that. To make a box plot, you need 5 statistical values from each data set, called a 5-number summary. So this is only one data set here, so we're going to find our 5-number summary for this data set. The 5-number summary consists of these 5 numbers: the minimum number, quartile 1, the median, quartile 3, and the maximum. And you'll be able to find this on your graphing calculator. So use your graphing calculator to run a one variable stat from a frequency table. So if you get out those notes, the actual steps that I made you so nicely, you will be able to do that. I'm actually going to put this in front, and I'm sorry, let me try to move it over a little bit. Okay, hopefully you can see this. So what I'm going to do is turn it on. I'm actually going to lead you through those steps just in case you have questions, and making sure that your menu looks like my menu, because it's always good practice to do it together. So here we go. On the sheet, we're going to be going to stat, and then we need to edit so that we can enter the numbers in. I'm going to be clearing this out. Notice the black is on the L1. I pressed clear, my down arrow key. Over to L2, I pressed clear and my down arrow key. I'm ready to go. L1, I'm going to put the actual score. So 1, enter, 2, enter, 3, enter, 4, enter. There were 6. And over here, I'm going to put the frequency. There were 6 1s, 12 2s, 13 3s, 15 4s, 8, and 6. So you should this table should mirror the table that I actually gave you here, so it should be the same. Okay, so I have 2 lists in there. I'm going to be pressing stat again right here. I want to calculate, so I push my over arrow key, and I'm going to be doing a one variable stats. So enter. Now the calculator asks you what list do you want it for. So I want to run a one variable stats on L1 and L2. So when you have a table, you have to remember it needs to be on both. Enter. Here we go. So now what you notice is here's our mean, here's our sum of x, and a few different things that we're actually going to be learning about. But let's drop down to min x equals 1. So that's our actual minimum. So I'm going to be writing that on our sheet. Minimum is 1. If you keep scrolling down, you're going to see Q1, which is quartile 1, that's 2. The median is 3, quartile 3 is 4, and the max is 6. So there's our 5-number summary. Put the calculator aside. Once we have our 5-number summary, we're going to plot these and draw our box and whiskers, which is why it was formerly called a box and whisker plot. So I'm going to put a little label here, a little title. I'm going to title this experiment. Down here we have one line because we're just going to need one line with the numbers. I'm just going to count by ones. I'm actually going to start at 0 here. I like to start a little bit down. And I don't even need the whole line. That was a pretty big line. And then I'm going to put scores. Please don't forget title and labels. I'm going to be looking for those. All right, so this is how we do it. Our minimum is 1. We put a little dot over the 1. Our quartile 1 was 2. We go to the 2. We put a little line there. Our median is 3. We go to 3. We put a little line there. Quartile 3 is 4. We put a little line there. Maximum is 6. We put a little point. So the max and min gets little points. The others get these lines, and that's because this will make the box, and these will extend to make the whiskers, hence your box and whisker plot for your scores from the experiment. All right, next, what does all this mean? So what I did on this sheet is I actually typed everything up. You're going to find this in your book a couple different places, but I put it all together for you so you have this really nice sheet. So this is interpretations of the data. And remember your percentiles? Well, take a look at this. The 25%, the 25th percentile is actually called quartile 1, which is known as the lower quartile. That means 25% or 1/4 of the values are between the minimum and the lower quartile. So let's go here. So between the minimum, between here and the lower quartile, which is at 2, remember this was quartile 1, this was the median, and this is quartile 3. So between here, 25% of the values that we have lie. Okay. How about the 50th percentile? 50th percentile, which is called quartile 2, you won't hear it that much because we do mention it, we do use the median. 50% of the values are between the minimum and the median, while the other half lie between the median and the maximum. So the median is that middle point. So from here to here, we get 50%, and from here to here, we get the other 50%. So this splits our data up really nicely. 50-50, because that's where the median is, the middle point. And let's look at the 75th percentile. It's called quartile 3, which is also known as the upper quartile. 75% of the values lie between the minimum and the upper quartile. So we're going to go back here. Here's quartile 3. So from here all the way down to our minimum, 75% of our data lies. Right here, 75%. So from here, 75% from quartile 3 to our minimum. That's where 75%. Now these are really starting to remind me of quarters, and let's talk about quartiles. So look at this, our next section. 25% of the values lie between the minimum and the lower. We just said that. Here's our 25% right here. 25% of the values lie between the lower and the median. So this little box right here, that little box right there, that's 25% as well. And guess what? This little box next to it, that's 25% as well. And you know what? From here to the max, quartile 3 to the max, that's 25% as well. That's where the data lies. We can split the data up to know how much of the data lies between those values. And so I just really explained how much each one, upper and maximum, median and upper, all 25%. That's why they're called quartiles, because they divide the data into quarters, which is, I think, really cool. All right, what does this mean according to the data that we have? So now we actually have to make some sentences. So from our experiment, which is this, we know that 25% of the scores are going to be between a 1 and a 2. I'm actually going to just write that for you. From our experiment, 25% of the scores will be between, between A1 and A2. We can also say from our experiment, 25% will be between a 4 and a 6. Also, 25% of the scores will be between a 4 and a 6. You can even tell me about where 75% of the values are going to lie. 75% of the values are going to lie between a 4 and a 1. Or even you can go the other way, which is this way, 75% between a 2 and a 6. So there's lots of different ways to interpret this data. You don't just have to do with 25%, just percent. You can do with 75%. Or we can even say 50% of the data will lie between scores of 4 to 6. Nope, no. See that? I'm rushing now. What was our median? 3 to 6. So 50% of our data is from a 3 to a 6. So you can make many, many, many different interpretations of the data. So hopefully this is going to help you, especially on your IA. So let's say that you didn't have just a frequency table. Let's say that this turned into a group frequency table. So let's go to the next part of your sheet, box plots from a grouped frequency table. The table shows heights, so now we're changing our situation, in centimeters of 50 kangaroos. I don't know if I've actually ever seen a live kangaroo. Maybe like at a zoo, but it would be cool crossing the street. Anyways, okay. Notice I did put an extra column here. Usually you would only get these two, but I'm adding an extra one, and it's always good to add that extra one because we have groups. We are going to have to find midpoint. So we have to find a middle point of that group. And that actually says it on the graphing calculator directions that I gave you as well. It's that last one, and it says you need to find a midpoint. And it tells you how to find that midpoint. So here we go. In order to use your calculator to get your 5-number summary, use the group frequency directions. Therefore, you will have to find the midpoint of each group. Now let me just remind you how to find the midpoint. You take the 200 here and the 210, you add them up, 200 plus 210, and you divide by 2, making sure that you do that in 2 different lines. 200 plus 210. So everyone's going to hear that. This is after school at about 5 o'clock. So here we go. Sorry for the interruption. So you add 200 and 210, you get 410. Now press enter, and when you do, you can divide that by 2, which is 205. But I'm going to see it. You're going to actually, will see a pattern. Every time you do this, it's just going to be the number in the middle. 210 and 220, the number in the middle is 215. 220, 230, 225, 230, 240, 235, 15, and you can see the pattern going down. So the next one is going to be 245. So now this is going to be my L1, and this is going to be my L2. And we're going to do the same exact thing that we did in the previous, for the previous box plot. We're going to put it in our calculator, run a 1-variable statistic, and you're going to get a minimum of 205, which makes sense because there was 4 of them at 205, and there's no number less than that. A maximum, let's do then. Our maximum is going to be 245. Our quartile 1 is going to be 215. Our median is going to be 225. And our quartile 3 is going to be 230. So 205, 215, 225, 230, and 245. So that's what you should have got from your graphing calculator. Now let's plot and do the whiskers. So I'm just going to put heights, cute kangaroos, and I'm going to put height down here in centimeters. And let's see, my lowest is 205, so we can now start with 200, 205, 210, 215. And 250. If you need to extend the graph, it's fine. You may also do it on the centimeter graph paper that I have in the back. So making sure that I did count correctly, I just went by 5. I started at 200. Okay, so let's do our first point is 205. So above 205, I'm going to put a point. Then our first line is at quartile 1. So that's Q1. So this was the min. Our next line is going to be at the median, which is 225, median here. Our next one is at 230, which is quartile 3. And our last little point is here, which is going to be the max. The box is drawn around quartile 1 to quartile 3. And this is actually, quartile 1 to quartile 3 is actually called something very interesting that we're going to learn in the next video, or video on spread actually. And connect them for the whiskers, and there we have our nice labeled with title box plot. And as you can see, hopefully you're already starting to make some conclusions in your head. 50% of the data, or the heights, 50% of the heights is now between 225 and 205, or 205 to 225. 25% of the heights are actually from 230 to 245. So again, you can make all these different conclusions from the data, which is this next sheet, interpretations of the data. And I'm going to move this up a little bit, but still keep it right here, because then we can just make, I'm going to make maybe one, the heights, or not even. Let's start with the actual percentage. What do you think? Let's say 75% of the heights. So 75% of the heights of kangaroos, and I like to say from our sample, because this is where the data is coming from, the sample of kangaroos. We're not generalizing it for all kangaroos ever born. It's just this sample of 50 that we have. So 75% of the height of kangaroos from our sample are between, and let's do the min all the way to quartile 3. So are between 205 centimeters and 230 centimeters. And you don't have to write the sentence exactly like this. You can say the height of kangaroo, or from our sample, the height of kangaroos are between 205 centimeters to 230 centimeters. This represents 75% of the kangaroos. So it doesn't necessarily have to be written exactly like this. That's all I'm going to make for the interpretations for right now, because you do have a lot of different ones. So I say try a couple. You can ask me. You also have work that needs to be done. This has been box plots from a grouped frequency table and box plots from just a frequency table. I hope this helped. Read and do your work. Thank you.